Hey, tennis fans. So, as we head into 2026, I thought it'd be cool to take a look back at some of the data from 2025. Personally, I've found it kind of difficult to find good, accessible data. But one site that I do like is Tennis Abstract. They have a ton of great data, and basically the goal here is just to contextualize it and really dig in and find out what that means. Because as you know, data tells a lot of the story, but it doesn't tell the full story. So what we're going to be looking at today is based on the last 52 weeks, an adjusted serve and return chart. So what that really means is it's adjusted based on the level of your opponent, right? So for example, if you're playing the 95th ranked player, the 90th, and the 75th, um, but other players are playing top 10 players, top 20 players, the percentages might look different, right? So a lot of times they'll show graphics, or if you just go to a website, you'll see what each player's hold percentages is and their return percentages. But that doesn't really give you a lot of context, right? Like if they're playing low ranked players, that's not gonna carry weight as you play more difficult players. So I really wanted to look at what that trend looks like, right? So for example, a player like Yannick Sinner, right? I don't think it's really like it's going to be shocking at all, but his level really doesn't drop, right? His level maintains the same as he's playing players that are ranked 93rd versus players that are ranked like 7th. His level doesn't really change. That's not the same case for everyone, though. So that's the goal here. It's to look at it if you're playing like a mystery player X. Um, and how does everyone stack up when that's when you're moving kind of the opponent out of the equation. Um, so this is kind of the chart that I'll dive into, but first I'll kind of show the data behind it. Hopefully people find this interesting. But um, so the way this whole thing came together was just looking at the percentages, right? So your hold rate and your break rate versus top 100 players versus top 50 versus top 20 versus top 10. And then from there, we kind of adjusted it, and I'll get into that. But just to show a couple examples, so that the actual chart means more is first like center example A, right? We'll just look at hold rate. So against top 100 players, 91.5. Versus top 50, 90.9, not much difference. Versus top 20, 90.4, pretty much the same. Versus top 10, 90.6. So his level, don't think that needs again much explaining, but it just doesn't drop. Like he's that good against everybody. 90% is better than everybody, and it stays better than everybody. Um, for example, though, we'll look at like Alexander Zverev, or yeah, we'll look at Zverev. So 86% versus top 100, 85 versus top 50, not much difference. And he drops a little bit more to 82, and then he drops to 80 versus top 10. So like you can see his level declines as the opponent gets more difficult. Not shocking, right? But sometimes the extent is bigger than others. Um, this one kind of stinks when I saw it, like, but one of my favorite players down here, Tommy Paul, holds at 80%. So that's below average to begin with. We're just looking at the top 50 players, but this is slightly below average, 80% versus top 100 players. That drops to 74% versus top 50, then to 65 versus top 20, and then 60 versus top 10. Like that's a 20, like that drops 20%, which is pretty significant. So that's not what you want to see. So like as his opponent gets more difficult, he holds serve drastically less. Um, the good news is his break rate goes down, but it's still a pretty elite level. But yeah, not what you want to see right there. Similar to with like Zverev, right? Um, in terms of how he returns, 21% average against top 100 players, drops a little bit, 19% versus top 50. Then it drops a bit more to 15% versus top 20, and then just 9% versus top 10 players. And it's not a sample size thing either. Like he's played 15 matches versus top 10 players. I believe it's 15, but yeah, that's a pretty significant drop, right? Um, and like you expect it to go down because the level opponent gets more difficult, but you don't want to see it drop significant, especially if it's not already a strength. Um, so like that's kind of what you'll see on the right if you're wondering what some of these are kind of where we start to adjust it. So like you can see like the whole trend and the break trend. So like center's whole trend is barely negative. Like it's pretty much the exact same. So like uh you can sort it right and take a look. So like some players actually do get better. And again, it might be a little bit of a sample size thing here, but Mensik, Shapovalov, and Rinderknecht actually hold at a higher percentage as the opponent gets more difficult. So whether that might change over time or they just play better against better players, they're gamers, they show up. Also, Muller does too, not to leave him out. But that's something that you can see. So like uh that doesn't necessarily mean that they're better than the players that are underneath them, right? So Sinners changes his whole trend is negative, right? As the opponent gets better, he holds serve very ever so slightly less, but he's still holding serve way higher than all these other people. So like just because your whole trend is positive doesn't mean that you're better than anyone with a hold trend that's negative. Same thing with the break trend. Well, I'll go the other way too. So if you want to look at the opposite, these are the people that get way worse, hold at lower rates as the opponent gets more difficult. So here you got Grigor, Taipal, Darderi, Zizou, Brooksby, Baez, Draper, Mahach, Diminor, Carabelli, Mazzetti, Tiafo. Um, but again, some of this matters less, right? So like if you're holding serve at a very high rate, it's okay. If you're not, then it hurts a lot more. So like Baez up here, right? Baez is only holding serve like 52% of the time against top 10 players, like 66% of the time against top 100 players. Like the fact that his drop off is that significant is not good. Not good at all, respectfully. Um, and then yeah, we'll take a look at the other one. So break trend. So similar, right? Fees and Learner Tien, they actually break at a higher rate as the opponent gets more difficult ever so slightly. Um, and then most people, as you can see, start to go down. Like this is basically your slope, right? You learn this in math class where you're calculating the change between various points. So you're just kind of looking at like your break rate versus top 100, break rate versus top 50, top 20, top 10, and calculating what that slope is. So that's what this number represents. So here we got like Holger Rune doesn't change much, and his break rate is pretty elite. So that's what you want to see, right? Some people like Alexander Bublik, right? His break rate barely changes, negative 0.66%. But the thing is, he's only breaking at 16% of the time against top 100 players, which is well below average. So like the fact that it's barely changing means he doesn't get really any worse at this. That's just his norm. Like it doesn't matter the level of opponent. He's really not going to break between 13 to 16% of the time, regardless of his opponent. And we'll flip it to look at who the people are that should drop off the most. Baez, again, this is bad because he already drops off a ton while holding. So like breaking, right? 27% of the time, he breaks at 27% against top 100 players. It's elite. I think that's like top five, top six. Uh, but it drops off a cliff. So you get into the top 20, it gets pretty much cut in half to 16%. Then top 10, it's 5%. So not as his opponent gets more difficult, he can't hang at all, essentially. And then you got like Mahaj, who drops quite a bit, Brooksby, Shapovalov, um, Fonseca, in terms of breaking, right? He's breaking at 20% versus top 100, 21% versus top 50. Those are average, above average numbers, and then it drops to 15 and 6. Um, Again, sample size may play a part. They're young, but just shows you that uh, these numbers change quite a bit based on your opponent. So, like when you're looking at data and you see that he holds at 83% and 20%, that's not really indicative of the actual numbers because you're not factoring in the level of the opponent or removing that variable from the equation and kind of level setting it for the whole field. Um, so that's what we see here. And these are the metrics or the variables kind of on the chart that we'll switch over to in a second. So this is the adjusted hold percentage and the adjusted break percentage. So this kind of, again, like level sets it that the opponent is removed from the equation, and it's giving you a more accurate. So no matter who they're playing, like mystery player X again, like that's going to be their adjusted hold rate and their adjusted break rate, um, kind of looking at everyone on the same playing field. So again, this sorted for hold, no shocker, right center, like it doesn't really change much between what you saw, so it's not going to change um, here. For those of you that are wondering maybe how this is calculated, it's really just like looking at the slope and what their average is, and then adjusting it based on that. So like there's some columns in here, adjusted hold, adjusted break, hold slope, break slope. That's really all it is. Nothing too crazy, but just really level setting it. Um, so yeah, well, I guess we'll just cover some of the top ones, but Sinner, Fritz, Alcaraz, Rinderknecht, Mensik, Auger-Aliassime, Djokovic, uh, Zverev, Shelton, Sonego, Lehečka, Greek Sport, Holger Rune, Bublik. I don't think any of these are like overly shocking. Um, but it's just really showing you like what their actual hold rate is. So um, like Shelton over here is at 82.4, but over here it's showing you 85, or like Zarev's at 86 and the adjusted hold is 82.69. So like it's showing you that he's not actually gonna like that's not really his holding percentage. Um, and then same thing with break, or first we'll look at some of the people that don't hold well, like Baez, Dimitrov, Carabelli, Darderi, Brooksby, TP, Bergs, Mahaj, Sarundalo. Um, so like some of these people you'll see like they have a higher hold rate over here. Like Dimitrov's at 84%. It's not 84%. And his might be like sample size too. He missed part of the season. Like leave it up for grabs. But I do think he played like 5 matches against top 10 players and didn't have good hold or break metrics. And then same thing with like TP, right? We covered it, but like 80% holder rate, it's average, if not slightly above average. And then really his adjusted is like 66, like when you're playing, you adjust the level it for the level of opponent. Um, this also tells you like what people need to work on, right? If they want to become in that elite tier where you see like adjusted break rate, Alcaraz at the top, Sinner at the top. So they're top three in both. It's elite, right? And that'll be reflected on the chart that we'll look at on the other tab. Sarandillo stays really high. Fakina, Fils, Medvedev, Lerner, Draper, Pacero, Runa, Diminor, Djokovic, TP, Mazzetti, kind of ran out like the very good elite tier. Um, yeah. And on the flip side, uh, these guys just don't break at a good rate. Carabelli, Nakashima, Mahach, Soniga, Rinderknecht, Rublev, Shelton, Griekspoor, Diallo, Lehečka, Fritz. Um, so that kind of shows you again that maybe their weakness where some of these guys these are all top 50 players, right? If they want to get into that top 5, top 10 range, something here's got to change. You can't have one of these that's that poor. And that's kind of also reflected here. So this is games 1 per 25. So in short, if you were to play 100 service games, we'll use Sinner as an example, he'd win 90 of those 100 service games. And if you were to play 100 return games, he'd win 27. So it's basically just looking at it like that, but then dividing it, filtering it because you don't play 100 games in a match, right? So 25 is slightly more than I think the average two-set match, but just kind of made it easy to do the math. So this kind of shows you what that means because I think return or break rate is slightly more important than a hold rate, right? Like you'll see people here with like a 12% break rate, but a 28, and then you see like Alcaraz at 28. That's more than double, right? So it's hard for you to catch somebody when they're breaking twice as often as you are, right? In 100 games, Alcaraz is going to break 100 return games. Alcaraz is going to break 28 times. Fritz is only going to break 12 times. That's 16 more games Alcaraz is going to win just on return. And then you look at serve, right, and Fritz, they're pretty similar. Fritz is slightly better. So, like, it just is a good way to, like, kind of contextualize, like, what that's going to result in terms of how many games you're going to win. And this is out of just 25 games played. So, like, yes, Sinner is elite. Alcaraz is elite. We kind of already knew that. Djokovic, no, he had a down year, but Medvedev and Holger Rune really don't vary that much per opponent. I think they'll have, I know Holger Rune's injured, but I think I expect him to make a recovery at some point and start to play really well again. And I also think Medvedev could have a big bounce back year. Um, Same thing with Arthur Feast coming back from injury. But yeah, it's just trying to showcase this. And then on the flip side, like these guys are just losing a lot down here. Um, So then, yeah, then the last thing I'll go back to is just the chart, which just kind of displays where they're located, right? The x-axis is the hold adjusted hold percentage, which we covered, and the y-axis is the adjusted break percentage that we covered. So here, right, you want to be in the top right of this chart, obviously. So it means you hold at a really high rate against the level set field, adjusting for opponent, and adjusted break, you want to break at a really high rate, right? That just means you're winning more games than everybody else. No Shock, Sinner, and Alcaraz are by themselves kind of in their own tier. And then you kind of want to be, I would say, here next. Um, Djokovic, Holger Medvedev. Um, and then you kind of have the big servers over here that don't break a lot but hold serve. Rinderknecht, Fritz, Mensik, FAA, Zverev, Shelton, um, Bublik, Fonseca. So this tier here obviously takes care of their serve, and that's very important. But they're not, if they want to get into maybe like competing for Grand Slams and everything, like they're probably gonna have to break at a higher rate than 10 to 15%. They gotta move, they want to move themselves up in here, right? If Taylor Fritz can start returning like Munar, right? You get into this area. Think that put him in a clear top four with how good his serve is. Not that it's that easy to just do that, but you gotta something's gotta move here. You gotta get better at something to position yourself in this area where you're clearly winning Grand Slams. Um, so yeah, and then personally, I think it's better to be in this area than here. I think the break rate being higher is slightly more impactful because as you see like the intervals here, right? It's like you're holding serve at like, I don't know, 85, 83%. These guys are holding it at like 75, 78. It's a few percent less, right? 5 to 7% less, but they're breaking at 23 versus 10. It's over double the break rate when it's just a fraction of the serve rate. So I think personally, it's slightly better to be up here for long-term success. But again, it also has its things as you start to get more left. Uh, it just means if your serve is off, you're going to be in some serious trouble. Like Ty Paul over to here, right? Breaks a ton, great returner. The serve isn't cutting it. You really want to be over here, and that's where he is for when it's not adjusted, when you're just like, because he plays a lot of players that aren't in the top 50 that are lower ranked, and that's where um, he has a top three, top four return of serve. Like for example, this is just looking at it um, hardcourt only. It's a different graph, so I don't want to confuse people too much, but it's a top 50 versus top 100 players. So um, and only hard courts, and he has the third highest break rate. But again, that's because it's not adjusted for the level of opponent. Um, so like as we do look here, he moves a lot more left and down. Um, so yeah, you just wanna be as far right and up as possible, um, not in the bottom left or bottom. Yeah. Um, Plan to do this as well for the Windsor, and then throughout the season, hoping to yeah, create some more points and just use data and try and um, use it in a cool way to give extra insights. Feel like there's an opportunity to do it in tennis. I don't see a ton of like advanced analytics and just um, sometimes you do, and you'll see like ratings, right, for like forehand, backhand, and like shot quality and average hit speed, but I feel like you just don't see as much as you do in like other sports like football or basketball. Um, so yeah, just trying to add some more context to the game and see if this has any correlation with actual results. But yeah, thanks for listening.